If it's Tuesday, it must be Belgium. I just felt like saying that because this movie title came to me, the movie of 1969, I believe. But this is serious business about Belgium, a country that we really do not talk about very often at all, right? Let me tell you what is so urgent about Belgium, this kind of innocuous little country, is because they passed the first law of its kind in the world to give sex workers, their words, not mine, because we at the Warriors do not believe sex is work, work is sex. Sex worker that the media uses, that various governments use, is in the public vernacular. We don't believe sex worker is like any other worker. It's not like lawyer, doctor, nurse, teacher, janitor. No, it's a class unto itself. But Belgium passed this law saying we are going to give our sex workers pensions and also maternity leave. Now, I, of course, asked the question because my mind thinks like this: maternity, is that from being exploited by the sex buyer? Is that just because you may have a boyfriend or a husband and you're married and have a child? We don't know. There are a couple of different rules they put into this, which is it must be a clean room, it must be clean sheets, you must have condoms. I ask you, when we have various studies from around the globe that say upwards of 97% of women in the sex trade are trafficked, exploited, enslaved. Remember at the Warriors, we are using the word slavery now because it's truly this trafficking. A better descriptive word is enslavement. Keeping somebody in chains. Think of this figuratively, so they cannot leave. So they are indebted to you for your monetary gain, for your power. So how is this all going to work? Nobody seems to know. It's that typical, a government puts out a plan, to grab a headline, and then the plan is not thoroughly thought through. Also in Belgium, all we have to do is look at Amsterdam, Netherlands, Germany, I should say, where the sex worker, again, their words, not mine, where all of this has been legalized for years now, it does not work. There are no benefits for the exploited person, for the prostituted person. The supply and demand, think about this, when there are no ramifications, accountability, and there's money to be made. There's money to be made. The criminals, the traffickers, the pimps are always 10 steps ahead of you, me, and law enforcement. It is proven in Germany and Netherlands that the sex trade has just increased. Why, after all, in Germany, they have 10-floor brothels. They look like apartment buildings, 10 floors. They have various signs around, things like get a brat and a beer and a girl, a lunch package. They have things like that. These women are not any better off. Lots of studies about this. So we are still seeing this pushed. And Belgium, it's so important because I feel like this is a test. We know it's a test. They're trying very hard in the United States to do similar, but it's been drowned out in the last few years because, after all, subjects such as trans and pronouns and BLM and all those other things kind of took over for a while. But one of my first forays into Washington, D.C., actually, it was my first trip down there to address trafficking, slavery as I now call it. I remember a lot of the women I was meeting with, and remember, I was new to the game, so to speak. They were all going to this open hearing that day because the sex workers wanted to be heard. And I understand from that it was 11 and a half hours. I did not attend it. I took the train back to New York. Now, of course, I would be attending it. I know so much more. And these people were just shouting down all of the groups, organizations, government representatives that were there to say why the sex trade is inherently harmful to girls and women, in particular to all people. We know people are exploited, and it's mostly are vulnerable. We also know in Germany, these women are not German. They're not the blondes, fair-skinned. They are brought in from the poor countries in Africa, Poland, those type of places. They are enslaved. So this sex worker story that was put out, and kind of nobody here in the United States really covering it. I always find things in foreign media. This is not okay. We know it is, and according to I'm even going to quote the UN now. I know we don't like them. I know. I have similar feelings. But according to their own manifesto, let's just say, their own human rights abuses in the description, this is a total abuse of human rights. And it's being allowed to go on, perpetrate it. So not only do we sit here and talk about all of this horror, okay? And I want to remind you, nobody chooses to be a sex worker. Their words again, not mine. Let me tell you, maybe 1% choose to go into that field, but the real victims and survivors of the sex trade that we at the Warriors work with, talk to, know about, interview, they are completely exploited, completely vulnerable. I mean, as you can see today, I've got my Lynn's Warriors, one of my shirts on, because after this, we're heading downtown. We're having an art therapy session with survivors of human slavery. We want to offer solutions, right? Are we going to stop all of this? Let's be very realistic. No, we are not. It is a runaway train that has been allowed to go on, not only in the United States, but around the globe. It is the biggest moneymaker. I bet my everything on it. I know you might think it's drugs, but I am told it rivals the drug trade. It is easier to take vulnerable people, communities, and force them into this enslavement over and over again, as opposed to drugs and growing and transporting and getting through, borders and this and that, which they're doing a pretty good job right now with our open U.S. borders. But it's easier. Law enforcement will tell you. If they don't say it, in person, they'll say it behind the scenes. It is easier to traffic, to enslave people. And the demand, let me remind you, is for children. So we talk about these laws, Belgium, great big world law to allow them. Isn't this great? This is the article I read, coming out of the BBC actually. They'll get a pension and they'll get, maternity leave. Maternity leave from who? From being exploited and abused? So we have to ask a lot of questions. This is not anything normal. This is not anything the people want in the United States or across the globe. And no little girl or boy wakes up and says, I want to be a prostitute, mommy and daddy, when I grow up. Let's understand what is happening. Let us understand that this will seep now into more of a push behind the scenes in our society. But let us learn from this, that on our watch, this will not be allowed, that we will talk to our kids open and honestly. What's wrong with education? What's wrong with, not everybody's cut out kids to be a student, going to the trades, the plumbing, the woodworking, all of that, HVAC. That's okay, but it's not okay to grow up and go into the sex trade. And again, I remind you, the demand is for children. So we hear about, adults and women. But I bet you if somebody asks for a child, whether it's here in the U.S. or Belgium or Germany or the Netherlands, they will be led to a child. So be aware of what's going on. This is ridiculous. We're not having any part of it. Our hashtag at the Warriors is Community Creates Change. Not only are we educating, but we also intervene. We want to provide survivors with techniques or services. Are we a service provider? No, we're not officially. We offer arts. We'll be getting into kickboxing, yoga. Today we have the art therapy. We have food. We talk. It's just community coming together. It's a safe space, and I want all of you to think about that. We're sitting upon Giving Tuesday right now, and I ask you to please vet anybody you're giving money to working in this human trafficking. I have to say it because I know so many organizations that I feel like it's the thing to get involved with now. Trafficking, kids, saving and all that. Remember, there's no saving anybody. Anybody who is exploited, enslaved, it is a lifelong trauma that needs to be dealt with. Adults my age who had things happen to them as children still report to me today that they're suffering from trauma off and on, good days and bad days, but it is a lifelong journey, right? So we have to be ready for all of this. We certainly don't want our children and grandchildren to be any part of it. And you know what? People always want help. when they're involved in it. Open your eyes, listen, learn. If you see anything or something doesn't sit right, please say something. Call 911 immediately. You won't be held responsible for anything. Let's get reports out there. Keep an eye out for other children, getting off of school buses, walking around alone at malls, things of that nature. If something, remember, does not sit right in your gut, it usually is not right. So let's come together. Let's honor our hashtag Community Creates Change. If you so feel inclined, please make sure this Giving Tuesday, obviously the Warriors were part of anything that will help us further the kind of work we are doing, which is really boots on the ground. But please keep your eyes and ears open. It's about protecting children, protecting yourselves, protecting families. Do not shut the door on any of this. Community creates change. Remember, as we go into the holiday season, one little act of kindness each day. Doesn't even have to cost money. It can be volunteering, obviously donating goods and services, holding a door for somebody, taking a tweet of ours, and sharing it on your platforms, leveraging the internet for good, talking, putting that broom down or mop or whatever you're doing in the laundry for 15 minutes and spending it with a child. There's a lot of things we can do that don't cost money. And always treat other people with respect the way you want to be treated. It goes a long way. Please help us honor our Warriors hashtag Community Creates Change as we kick off December. We're into the holiday giving season. Join us. And remember, each and every day, wake up and go out and be a warrior.